Hey, you guys, welcome to Addictive Personalities. My name is Bethany, and this podcast is based on lived experience, not professional advice. We're going to talk about addiction in all forms, mental health, trauma, healing, and everything in between. This is a space for honest conversation without judgment. So, wherever you are in your journey, I'm really glad you're here. Hey, guys, welcome back. I want to start with a quick affirmation. As always, I am willing to see things clearly, even when it's uncomfortable. Okay. So we talk about addiction like it's one thing, but it's not. Different addictions do completely different things to your brain and your body, and they serve different purposes. So, for instance, me talking about my own experience will not resonate as well with people who are recovering alcoholics or people who were addicted to opiates. It's just not the same. Our mental health may be a common denominator, like we talked about in the last episode, but the addiction itself varies. It's almost like, people think that all addiction means everyone suffers the same way, and it's just not the case. Let's start with opioids. Okay, we have an epidemic in this country with fentanyl and heroin and pain pills, and it can start innocently enough. We hear a lot of stories about how people got hooked because it was actually something that was prescribed to them. And then it became something different. So this isn't about chasing a high the way people think. This is about everything going quiet. So the purpose of choosing this type of substance is about no pain, no anxiety, no memories. Your nervous system just finally gets a break, right? You just disengage. You don't feel anything. And that's the point. It's too much. Whatever it is too much. And then it changes. It becomes survival because your body becomes dependent. And now you're not using to escape, you're using it to not get sick. That's a completely different kind of addiction. Now, just think about that. Having to, thinking that, okay, for instance, in a situation where you're prescribed pain pills because of a medical procedure, and then once you get off, or once your prescription runs out, you feel what they call dope sick. And your body is trying to detox, but it's a living hell. And I've heard this from so many people. And I can't imagine it because I've never gone through it. But it sounds awful. So it's a different aspect of what continues the usage. Right? It might start off one way, but it then becomes something completely different. Now compare that to stimulants. Okay, we talk about meth, cocaine, even Adderall. And this is energy, focus, intensity. For some people, it's the first time they feel capable, like they can actually function. For me, it was the first time I felt like I was awake. I was waking up. I was thinking faster, talking more, engaging more. It was social. I felt more alive and like myself than I had ever felt before. But it also pushes your brain past its limits, and eventually your brain can't regulate anything on its own. And we talked about that a little bit in the last episode. And then there's alcohol. which sits in this weird middle space because it can be social, it can be numbing, it can take the edge off. Oftentimes, with people addicted to cocaine or who use cocaine in a binge fashion or social fashion, it's combined with alcohol with the intention of drinking more alcohol and having a longer night. And this is very common in like places like that never sleep, like New York or Chicago. I experienced that. I did that all night long. So it's a mix, you know, and it's socially acceptable. And it's dangerous because it's normalized and nobody questions it until it becomes a problem. And usually that problem is really well hidden. And that also becomes something that your body physically needs to function. So there are two really serious addictions here that require actual medical detoxification, and supervision so that you don't die, right? Um, I don't know of anyone who has died specifically because of the detox from heroin. I know that you feel like you're dying, but I think it actually becomes more of an issue when we're dealing with alcohol. You have people who have tremors or who shake when they don't have alcohol, and people who can consume large, large amounts of alcohol. And they're like, they've become immune to it. They've become tolerant. Their tolerance is like super high. So a lot of times you'll see people drinking full pints, and you'll see that they don't want their families to know, so they hide the trash and they have their hiding spots. And um, you know, it's an issue, but it's easy to get. And so yeah, I can bet that that's probably a really, really tough one to navigate post um, alcoholism, because it's everywhere, depending on where you live. In Utah, it's not everywhere as much as it is in places like Vegas or California, where there's a liquor store on every corner. Then we have gambling. And this isn't no substance, although gambling for me was running concurrent with my meth addiction. Because at that point, I was using meth to function and feel normal, and then the gambling was my escape, if that makes sense. So, but this is one of the most addictive behaviors there is. That is dopamine, anticipation, risk. It's the almost. Almost. I've almost won the jackpot. I've almost won my money back. Right. And I'll be honest, I did more questionable things to keep gambling than I ever did to get high. Because there's no end point. You're always chasing something. It's a real doozy. And unless you've been in that space, you probably don't understand it. Um, I think it's one of the worst ones out there, actually, because you're basically risking it all. And there are families who have gone completely bankrupt, and there are people who have taken extreme risks by borrowing money from the wrong people, or mortgaging, putting a second mortgage on the house, or spending, you know, college funds. Who know? I mean, it's really, because once you get started and you feel lucky, and it's just this false feeling that you're, oh yay, ping ping ping, I'm winning, and then you lose it all, and then, oh shit, I have to get it back. So imagine that. It's no good. And then there's porn and compulsive behavior. There's also eating. People use that. There are addictions to eating. There's also addictions to plastic surgery or shopping. So those I think people don't talk about enough because it is uncomfortable. Nobody walks around and says, I just spent $1,000 that I can't afford, or I just racked up 20,000 more dollars in debt um, to buy things I don't need, or I just, ate a whole bag of chips, or I can't stop eating candy. Um, Nobody really talks about that enough as an addiction. We joke about it, I think, but there are serious ramifications of those things. All of these things rewire your brain. Um, Even if there's no substance affecting your brain chemistry, it still rewires your brain on a behavioral level. It removes connection, at least with the porn part, right? It removes the vulnerability aspect of being naked, physically and even emotionally. And real life starts to feel flat. And then we see in other behavioral addictions that it's that compulsion and that lack of discipline, and they're just small dopamine hits every time you fill your cart and purchase and then receive something that you ordered online, right? But then the reality is you have to pay for that, especially if you're using credit, like that becomes debt, and then that racks up interest. And so then you feel, it just kind of, it makes you depressed um, very quickly, actually. So when we say addiction, we're oversimplifying something that is actually incredibly complex, because it's not just mental. That was my dog trying to get my attention. Your body adapts. Your brain chemistry changes. Your baseline changes. So when you stop, it's not just a decision, it's your entire system trying to recalibrate. And so I want to encourage everyone, and like I talked about in the last episode with the mental health, like this correlates with that because you can't just do it by yourself. And I don't want to give that impression that I did it alone. I had the willpower and the motivation to seek solutions to the problems I would face, trying to adapt and normalize my life, because I didn't know how to do that. So I sought out, you know, assistance with, the state as far as Department of Workforce Services, and with my doctor and my Adderall. And some people will go to meetings, and some people will do a program, outpatient program. And we really just want to make sure that there's a support system and habit building that is healthy, that replaces what your body was so used to and that you just stopped, right? If you don't get those things sorted out with either a mental health professional, medication if necessary, um, and new routines, then your body and your brain are gonna try and compensate in another unhealthy way, um, because the root cause is still not resolved. So again, make sure that you understand that it is a battle, and there will be many battles, and don't just put band-aids on it. In all of these examples of addictions, um, which are not as manufactured as some of the other addictions like social media addiction, phone addiction, TV addiction, um, like these are the things that are necessary to understand. And if you've been struggling to um like stay clean or sober, and if you're just like doing it because you know that you have to, but like you're still triggered and like you still have to go to meetings every time you're triggered, like the whole point I'm trying to make is that we all want to get to a point where we're no longer triggered. How do we do that? And how we do that is by really getting into the nitty gritty and resolving those things that trigger us in the first place, because we have control. At the end of the day, we have control over what triggers us. We just have to retrain our brain on how to react. And if our reaction to every adversity is, oh, I don't want to feel this, or I don't want to deal with this, and I want to use, well, that means we haven't resolved anything. And that going to a meeting, yeah, gets you through that day. But don't you want to get through life without having to be in fear of being triggered or having to remove yourself completely out of, you know, a certain environment? I mean, obviously, I am not going to go, I don't want to go to California as much as possible. I'm not going to go hang out with friends that are using. I just don't have the desire to. I don't have to force myself to remove those people. I, you know, I just choose not to. And, but let me tell you, when I see people on the street, or when I see someone who resembles a person who is in active addiction, I don't get triggered. I've found paraphernalia in my house recently, old stuff that I've just packed away because, like I told you, I'm a quote unquote collector, or which is basically a fancy way of saying hoarder. Anyway, I put stuff away and then I forget about it. But when I do have you know, a motivator to organize, I have gone and I went through things and found baggies and straws, even scales. And you know what? I was not triggered. So to me, that is a sign of healing, true healing. And that's what I'm encouraging everyone to do. It's not to just like deal with ongoing battle of using or not. That's not freedom. Freedom is making the choice every day, not even having to make the choice, but having made the choice. And so you know that using or drinking is actually something that makes you sick. And I know that's not the case for everyone. And I'm not saying that it should be. I don't know what should or shouldn't be. All I'm saying is I want everyone to get to a point where that's not a battle anymore. And I hope that that's what you take away from this episode. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to keep coming back and listening. I'm going to keep sharing, learning, and figuring this out with you in real time. And wherever you are in your journey, you're not alone. There's more to come, and we're just getting into it. This is Addictive Personalities.